I think it's really important to educate yourself about end-of-life decisions. Knowledge is power. And I invite people to come by the showroom or to call me to pick my brain because I have all this knowledge about planning. If you have time on your side, the decisions you make are so powerful. My biggest referral source are the local hospices and the chaplains from the hospitals around us. And if I can get the family member to come before the event, then their decisions make complete sense. People don't know things like if you own property at a cemetery that has a mortuary, you're not obligated to use that mortuary. You can use the grounds for the interment, but you can use an outside service that may save you thousands of dollars. People don't know these things.
And this is why it's important to go in and consult about these things first.
Right.
Rather than having somebody pass away
Right.
and potentially having to go in and talk about it at that time.
Exactly.
Then,
because you are at the mercy. I mean, you have to make a decision. If someone dies at home or in a hospital, the facility wants them moved within a couple of hours. So if you don't already have a favored mortuary or a plan, you're scrambling instead of, just picking the phone up and making one call. My husband died at home on a Sunday morning. Everything was planned years earlier. So there were no decisions. It was one phone call, and I spent the whole day with my children, which was a gift because most people wait and then they have to run. I tell my clients all the time, please drive carefully, because they think they're okay, but I know they're not okay.
Oh.
I know they're not okay.
I wanted to read something here on your outline here. It says, there's a beginning, middle, and end to everything. Every relationship we have will end. People move away, transfer to a different school, change jobs, divorce, and they die. We are all terminal. We just don't know our expiration date. And I thought that was a good little quote on your outline here. Expand a little bit on that in terms of how you want to educate folks.
Yeah. Well, I tell people all the time to not be caught dead, plan ahead for yourself. If you have elderly parents that are ultimately going to die, if you have a plan in place, it just makes all the difference in the world. And I was in a group the other day where one of the participants, her husband is very, very ill. And she said, should I bring my husband in to do a pre-need plan? I said, you don't have to bring your husband on. I said, you're going to make the arrangements ultimately. It's smarter if you do it now while you have your faculties. You don't have to pay anything. You just have a plan. A lot of families come to us and they don't even have a cemetery plot. I deal with 5 local brokers who sell cemetery property at 50% of what you pay at a cemetery. That's a huge savings. A lot of people come to us and they forget if the fellow was a vet, he's entitled to property and a vault and a marker at the National Cemetery. This saves a family about $5,000 or $6,000.
And we have an example here of a casket for a Marine Corps.
Yep. And you know what? When someone has been a vet, they definitely should have the honors. It's a beautiful ceremony, and there are different VFWs and American Legion posts that are happy to come out, do a 21. It's a very moving thing to have this done, and every vet should have that honor.
I was reading, I was doing a little research, and they said that one of the vital criteria of estate planning is to have a will or a trust.
Absolutely.
So that is that something correct?
Well,
that before the casket,
I was telling Alex before we went on air, I was doing a marker for an elderly woman that brought her children in. And in the course of doing the layout, she talked about the property she owned, and it was a considerable amount of property. And because I'm a volunteer, I can say anything I choose. And she was my peer. And I said to her, "Do you have a will and a trust?" She said, "No." I said, "We're going to stop what we're doing. I want you to go home and call your attorney and make an appointment to do a will and a trust. You have to protect your heirs. You know, there's life after death."
And that's to avoid probate, right?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, the will is gonna determine or it's gonna distribute who will administrate your estate,
Right.
and what children will go, what
Right.
property will go to
Right.
anything.
And
Well, the
it's-
thing is
yeah.
if you die without a will, it's called intestate. And then the state of California will require you to do a probate, which is not a cheap thing. It's an expensive process.
not a fun process.
It
yeah.
is not a fun. I've met so many families that it takes a long months and months, sometimes years, depending on the size of the estate.
Yeah, because you always have one or two individuals in the family
Exactly.
that are being combative,
Right,
and
right.
they want more than the other
Right,
guy,
yeah.
and that whole business. So that's really out of
Yeah.
control.
That's why, you know what I say to people, and I've said this all my life: if you're not using it and you do not need it, give it in your lifetime.
Well, again, joining us today is Heather Kobler with the Cassett Monument Company. She can be reached at 562-698-4890. That's 562-698-4890, and she can advise you and consult with you about all of these issues. I am looking at one of the outline pieces that you gave us, Heather, and there it says here there's 48 things that you must do in order to do this estate planning. And I'm looking at this, and this is overwhelming.
It is. In fact, if I get families to come in before the death and they see how much is involved in the planning of a funeral, that's the first heads up that they need to start moving forward to make decisions.
Yeah, and looking at this, I'll be honest with you, the general public needs this.
They need it
they
desperately.
need to see this
Right.
because this is overwhelming. I mean, even talks about music and food and even the time of the service,
Right.
you know, that kind of
Right.
thing. I mean, these are all things that you need to think about.
Right.
You know, I'll be honest with you, I haven't thought about any of this for
I know.
myself.
Well, you should.
And-
Let me ask you this. Have you had the what if conversation with your spouse?
Now you mentioned that here on the outline. I haven't.
Actually,
Well, you know what? You have to have the conversation. If you do nothing, have the conversation so you know, sweetheart, I want to be buried or I want to be cremated. And if you're a vet, I want the honors. You have to at least tell each other. When my husband and I did it, we picked the cheapest casket. See, when you shop for yourself, you're frugal. If somebody dies, you overspend. You're trying to overcompensate.
that's when all the kids are doing all the upgrades on the
Right.
on the
Yeah,
casket
exactly.
and
And
Well,
here's
can
the
I,
deal.
Can I get a pine box? Is
Yes,
that
you can have a pine box.
Really?
You can have a pine box made. You can provide your own casket. I'll tell you another thing. You can have a viewing of you in your own home. We did a funeral years ago for an umpire on home plate. People don't know. I mean,
and that's that can all be outlined in your will.
Absolutely.
You know, and
you know, Forethought Insurance. It's an insurance product. It's been around for a very long time. This is the only product they sell. And when I write a policy for somebody, I give them a special envelope and I tell them, give this to whoever in your family is the person that might be your executor or your spouse. And I say, here's the number you call 24 hours a day. If something happens, you call and then they make arrangements.